I'm wondering if this choice, I don't think it's going to surprise you, but just going in order as we're building up the interest, the 3v6 matchup in the West between the Nuggets and Blazers, I'm still curious, and I think we're at the point where I don't think that there's going to be a bad series. It was once we got past really Philly and Washington and Celtics Nets, I am genuinely intrigued by all these matchups. If Jamal Murray was available, I would be far more inclined to boost this series up. But thoughts, general impressions, X factors, takeaways, things to watch, anything on this matchup?
This is my first upset pick. I don't even like the Blazers that much, which is the crazy thing. I think that I like the matchup a little bit with Jokic having to be out on the floor, involved in a lot of high screen action with Dame Lillard. I think that's a problem for the Nuggets. I think both of these defenses are not good, but the Blazers defense with their new lineup has actually been okay. And I think Nurkic is a pretty good guy to throw at Jokic. I mean, if only because they're kind of familiar from playing together, but also because he's just big and he's physical and, he's pretty close to as good as you're going to do against Jokic. There's no answer for him. But yeah, I think Portland, has McCollum as a sort of a second option to score that, I guess the Nuggets Michael Porter's been great, but man, they're thin on the wings after that. And Facundo Campazzo, is he really going to bother either Lillard or McCollum? So I think there's not going to be a lot of great defense played. And I think the way that Portland goes into its offense with high screen action for Lillard is really going to be a problem for the Nuggets. So I think I feel pretty good about Portland. And I had it as 6, but that would mean that Portland would have to close it out. No, that would be okay because Portland's closing it out at home there. I'm good with that. Blazers in 6. That's my pick.
The Blazers are more interesting because they're terrible defense overall on the season, but they've been closer to league average since Jusuf Nurkic's return overall from injury. And then when you look at the minutes with him on the court, they rank in the 81st percentile of defensive efficiency. That includes all lineups who have logged at least 15 possessions. That's actually huge. That's huge. I agree with what you said about him going up against Jokic. I don't know how much it helps when Jokic is now scooting by guys off the dribble and taking threes. Or seem more willing to take threes. He also, when you look at his splits, he just seems more willing and better at shooting threes in the postseason. And so if there's an improvement from the point that he's at right now, I still think Portland's in trouble. The Michael Porter Jr. question is so fair because he played fantastic basketball after the Murray injury, and they did give him a little bit more on-ball responsibility. This still wasn't someone who was generating a ton of his own looks, and he doesn't set up the offense like Jamal Murray would. You mentioned how are they going to defend CJ McCollum and Dame? That would have been a problem to begin with. I do think Facundo Campazzo, just the pressure he can put on the ball without getting burned, that will help. They're going to miss PJ Dozier against those matchups as well. Even if you used him to go after Norman Powell, who gives the Blazers that north-south explosion. And I think for some reason, I can't explain it, and I didn't dive into numbers for it. I feel like he might have helped the Blazers defensively as well because he's more of just like this in-your-face guy and has the big play potential on defense where, he'll get burned, whereas Gary Trent Jr. was just solid positionally, but they needed, because they're not super talented defensively, aside from Covington and Nurkic, they need that guy who's going to give them energy and make big plays, even if sometimes it comes at the expense of other possessions. I just look, and I'm not sure how Denver is going to defend that. They have Aaron Gordon, which helps, but Aaron Gordon has spent more time defending guards than I thought he did this year. Do you want Aaron Gordon on Dame? Do you want him on CJ McCollum? I just don't know. My inclination, though, given how clutch Jokic has been this season, how well the Nuggets played overall without Jamal Murray, what Michael Porter Jr. gives you, and he's been a better help defender. I don't know how much that might necessarily matter in this series, but if you are worried about Powell and McCollum and Lillard breaking through what's happening on the perimeter, Michael Porter Jr. might actually become key there. I'm going Nuggets in 7. I don't feel great about it. I'd feel a lot better about it if we knew what was going on with Will Barton at the moment, because we know Dozier won't play. We know Murray won't play. I believe Monte Morris is back, so that gives you a little bit extra creation. But Barton is closer to the whole package than a Campazzo or a Monte Morris or even a Michael Porter Jr., just because I think Barton's the better table setter than any of those guys. I just can't pick against Jokic right now, and I think he'll set up gimmies for Michael Porter Jr. It's the same thing. Who's defending Michael Porter Jr. on the Blazers? Robert Covington's fantastic off the ball, but if you're putting the ball more in Michael Porter Jr.'s hands and that's the matchup, how good do you actually feel about that?
Yeah. No, I think that's all fair. I'll give you, I didn't realize, I was kind of leaning on this without knowing the numbers exactly, but I looked them up. So it's only 844 possessions, which is not a ton, but it's fairly significant.
In this season, especially.
Yeah. The lineup of Lillard, McCollum, Powell, Covington, and Nurkic is plus 14.1 net rating. They're good on both ends. Their defensive rating is 105.1. This is cleaning the glass, so no garbage time. I don't know, man. That's compelling to me. And just having Lillard, McCollum, Powell, and Nurkic, it's plus 15.9. And they're scoring 120.5 points per 100 possessions, giving up 104.6. And those guys are going to play the lion's share of minutes. I forget. I think it was Dan Feldman for NBC. Just kind of looked at the playoff series or looked at the playoff rotations as if, you're just going to play your 5 best guys, which is, that's not the case, but that's a pretty quick and dirty way to get an idea of how good these teams are because the benches don't matter as much. The Blazers are a lot better than their overall numbers look. Certainly their defensive rating looks on the year if they just lean on their best players. And so it sucks. I hate picking against Jokic. He's the best player in the series. He's obviously the MVP, but I think Portland's kind of sneaky. I think I don't know how you feel, but I got a little anchored to their really ugly skid when suddenly all the Dame Lillard's unhappy and Terry Stotts is on the hot seat and this thing's going south and I just buried them. And then, man, they finished strong and their 5 best players are good. So I kind of like the upset here in 6.
It's wild to me they're going in 6. I have Nuggets in 7, so I could clearly see it going either way. Do you have any X factors? I think one thing I am interested to see is how does Denver tighten up its rotation? Maybe the decisions are made organically based on who's available, but like Austin Rivers and Shaq Harrison were playing meaningful minutes for this team by the close of the regular season, and that could happen here. I think I still go Aaron Gordon just because I think he's going to see time against the dynamic duo in Portland. He defended point guards and shooting guards on more than a third or about a third of his partial possessions on defense this year. I think you have to, unless you really trust Facundo Campazzo, Morris, and Rivers as the combination to get after those two. But Gordon's going to have to shoulder a lot defensively, and they need more from him offensively too, because after sort of the honeymoon start, he slowed down there. I don't know what my X factor is for Portland because I don't want to pick anyone in the starting lineup or that main 5. And they also did shorten their rotation a ton towards the end of the regular season. So you mentioned playing your best players. I would totally agree with you there. They've already started doing it. I guess, could you just go Melo or is it Anthony Simons? Those 2 guys, anyone who could give you some minutes offensively where you can sit Dame and or CJ. I'll default to Melo there. It's not going to be Enes Kanter for me because they'll play him, but my guess is going to be that you have Nurkic playing 30-plus minutes per game. You also have the option of, do you use Rondae Hollis-Jefferson or Robert Covington even at the 5? Even Derrick Jones Jr. There are these different types of lineups. They haven't necessarily leaned upon a ton this year, but this could be a series where maybe it doesn't make so much sense to have Kanter on the floor as much. Or do you like him against Jokic in that scenario? I'm just defaulting to Melo here because why not? He's coming off the bench, and I don't think the Blazers have a strong bench overall, as much as we may like some of the guys. I still remain intrigued by, he's not healthy, but Nasir Little, if anyone cares about that. And Anthony Simons seems to get post-April. Anthony Simons after April 1st feels like he's always a threat, but I'll default to Melo as my X factor for Portland.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kanter, but like in the bad way, which is to say that if Kanter, the X factor is that if he has to play a lot, I think I would take my pick back because like that's just a death sentence having him try to handle Jokic in space and with guys cutting and pick and rolls and all kinds of stuff. Isn't it interesting that the best thing about Aaron Gordon on the Nuggets was that in theory, finally he's going to just do the stuff that he's good at, and he's going to scale down. He's going to trim the fat from his game. That Orlando is always trying to he wanted to always be a little more than he was, and now that's exactly what's being asked of him. You got to up the playmaking. You're going to have to score more. You're going to have to guard multiple positions. And he is their X factor because the asks are going to be huge. It's just interesting that this perfect fit, because he was going to sort of scale back a lot of the stuff that he had to do. Now suddenly it's like an amplified version of Orlando, where he has no choice but to sort of get out of. He has to play sort of outside of himself for the Nuggets to really do well here.
Yeah, I do wonder if they try. I don't know why it'd have to be in Jokic-less minutes, which there aren't going to be many of those. Do they need him to play make a little bit based on if Will Barton's not available? But maybe they could. I would say the biggest thing for him is he needs to knock down the threes and not stay moving on offense, because he's been fine when he's moving off the ball and trying to finish, but it feels like he's not always moving as much as he should be.
Yeah, I agree.
So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say Gordon. I reiterate that Gordon's role in this series is massive.
Blazers in 6 for you. I have Nuggets in 7.